At my $985,000 housewarming, my sister seized my arm. This house is perfect for my family there. Can you imagine celebrating the biggest achievement of your life? Finally buying your dream home, only for your own family to show up, look you in the eye, and demand you give it to them? And what if that outrageous demand wasn't even the most shocking part? What if it unearthed a horrifying, unspoken secret from 11 years ago? A secret so dark it redefined everything you thought you knew about the people who were supposed to love you most. I saw it in their eyes the moment they walked into my new house, that familiar look. The same cold, calculating glint I'd seen on my 21st birthday, the night my entire life imploded. That knot of dread, that prickle of fear, it all came rushing back as my mother and sister, Camille, surveyed the home I'd poured every ounce of my being into building. This house wasn't just a structure. It was a monument to every sacrifice, every late night, every single drop of sweat I'd invested in my IT firm. And they looked at it like it was already theirs for the taking. Growing up in Boston, our family seemed picture perfect. Dad in finance, Mom running a quaint boutique, 2 daughters, and a golden retriever named Buddy. But as the saying goes, looks are deceiving. The facade began to crumble when I was 13, the day my dad walked out. The divorce itself wasn't dramatic, but what followed was a masterclass in family dysfunction. My sister, Camille, for years my senior, quickly married Andrew, an investment banker from a wealthy family. Their wedding was lavish, but Mom blew over $65,000 she didn't have, rationalizing it with a sigh. A daughter only gets married once. I was 20, juggling 2 jobs and community college, barely scraping together enough for my bridesmaid dress. Then came the parade of children: Lucas, Meline, Noah. With each new baby, Camille's sense of entitlement swelled, and Mom was always there to fuel it, even if it meant sacrificing me. "Your sister has 3 children to feed," Mom would say, her voice dismissive. "What do you need the extra money for? Books? Can't you just use the library?" Meanwhile, I was pushing myself to the brink of exhaustion. Scholarships helped, but without family support, I worked as a barista at dawn, tutored in the afternoons, and did data entry on weekends. Sleep felt like a forgotten luxury. Dad, after moving to Chicago and starting a new family, slipped further into obscurity. Mom made sure any attempts he made to contact me were mysteriously missed or accidentally deleted. But I persevered. While Camille posted glamorous vacation photos, I was pulling all-nighters, coding and researching. I graduated at the top of my class. Mom attended my high school graduation, but left early because Camille called. Lucas had a slight fever. I never complained. This was just my reality, and it hardened my resolve to succeed on my own terms. I didn't need their approval. What I didn't see coming was how violently everything would change on my 21st birthday. That single night twisted the entire trajectory of my life, leading directly to the explosion 11 years later. My 21st birthday fell on a Tuesday. I remember because I actually got the evening off, which was incredibly rare. I wasn't expecting a big celebration. Camille and Andrew were expecting their 3rd child, soaking up all the family's attention. Still, turning 21 felt monumental. I was a legal adult, had graduated high school, and had partial scholarships to 3 universities. When I got home after tutoring, I found Mom and Camille hunched over spreadsheets at the kitchen table. They barely glanced up. "Leftover lasagna in the fridge, if you're hungry," Mom mumbled, her eyes glued to the papers. I heated a plate and joined them, a quiet observer. "What are you working on?" I asked, a sense of unease growing. Mom finally looked up. "Just sorting out some financial issues. Camille and Andrew need a bigger house now that Noah's on his way." I nodded, used to these conversations, but then I noticed something. "Why do you have my college paperwork?" Camille sighed dramatically. "We might as well tell her, Mom." Mom straightened the papers, then gave me that look, the one that always preceded a family sacrifice. "Evelyn," she began, her voice firm, We need to talk about your college plans. Camille's expecting again. They really need a 4-bedroom home. Andrew's bonus wasn't as high as they expected this year, and they're a little strained. I sat there, patiently, my stomach clenching because I knew exactly where this was going. The point is, Camille interjected, we've crunched all the numbers. Even with Andrew's salary and Mom's help with the down payment, we're still short. Short for what? I asked, my voice barely a whisper, even though the answer was already screaming in my head. We need to use your college fund, Mom explained, as if it were the most reasonable thing in the world. Honestly, it's not like you don't already have scholarships, and community college is perfectly legitimate. You can transfer to a university later, when things are less stressful for the family. My college fund, the one Dad started before the divorce, the one Mom had promised would be untouched. I was banking on that money to bridge the gap my scholarships didn't cover. But that's my money, I said, my voice shaking. Camille rolled her eyes. Dad set it aside for my education. Don't be selfish, Evelyn. We're talking about a house for your niece and nephew. Where should they sleep? Should Noah just live in a closet because you want to attend a prestigious university? That's not what I'm saying. I protested, my voice gaining strength. But I've worked so hard for this. I kept a 3.9 GPA while working multiple jobs. These scholarships won't cover everything. You can take out loans like everyone else. Camille practically yelled. Andrew and I have a mortgage. That's life. Or, she added with a smirk, you could just live at home and go to community college. That would be much more cost-effective. Something inside me snapped. A lifetime of compliance, of quietly accepting my place, shattered into utter indignation. No, a single word hanging heavy in the air. Mom blinked, clearly anticipating no opposition from me. Excuse me. No, I said again, louder this time. That money is for my education. Dad set it aside for me. It's not Camille's house money. Mom's face hardened. Evelyn, this isn't a negotiation. This is what's happening. Your sister has a family to support, and I have a future to build. I shot back, my voice trembling but steady. I earned those scholarships. I worked while maintaining perfect grades. I deserve to use my college fund for college. Camille let out a cold, dismissive chuckle. Oh, please, try having 3 children before you lecture us on what you deserve, as if you know anything about real responsibility. Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. This isn't fair, and you know it. Mom pushed back her chair, rising to her full height. Education is my top priority, I reiterated. That's not wrong. Well then, Mom said, folding her arms across her chest, if that's your attitude, you have a decision to make. Either that money will be used to help your sister, or you pack your bags and embark on your own journey. You're 21 now, after all. An ultimatum. A cruel, calculated ultimatum. Camille grinned, certain I would back down, just like I always did. But something fundamental had shifted inside me. Years of being second best, of always putting Camille's needs before my own, finally boiled over. I stood up slowly. I will pack my bags. If I hadn't been so utterly terrified, the shock on their faces would have been satisfying. Mom clearly hadn't expected me to choose independence. Don't be so dramatic, Camille scoffed. Where would you even go? I didn't answer. I just walked into my bedroom and pulled out my biggest suitcase. Methodically, I packed my clothes, toiletries, laptop, and important papers. The family photos on the wall no longer felt like mine. Mom appeared in my doorway as I zipped the suitcase closed. You're being foolish. Sleep on it, and we'll discuss it logically in the morning. There's nothing to discuss, I murmured, surprised by my own calm. You've made your stance clear. I'm making mine clear, too. I pushed my luggage past her, grabbed my worn bag from the coat rack by the front door, and walked out into the cold Boston darkness. Nobody called after me. Nobody tried to stop me. That night, I slept in my car in a Walmart parking lot, using my work uniform as a pillow. For 3 weeks, that became my routine. For jobs, sleeping in my car, showering at the gym where I had a discounted membership. I told no one. On the 17th day, my computer science instructor, Professor Helen Whitaker, found me sleeping in the library. She gently woke me, asking if everything was okay. Something in her kind eyes shattered my carefully constructed composure, and I told her everything. That evening, she took me to her home and showed me the guest room. "It's yours until you figure things out," she said simply. "No one should have to face this alone." Professor Whitaker became more than just a teacher. She became my mentor, my champion, the first person to truly believe in me wholeheartedly. She helped me secure more scholarships, guided me through financial aid forms, and gave me a critical reference for an internship that would ultimately transform my life. Everything that followed, every success, every struggle, was shaped by that night. It showed me I was utterly alone. Yes, but that chosen family could be far more supportive than biological relatives. Most importantly, it revealed a strength within me that I didn't know I possessed until I was forced to call upon it. With Professor Whitaker's help, I pieced together enough financial aid, scholarships, and part-time jobs to attend a local public university. It wasn't Boston University, my dream school, but it had an excellent computer science program and I loved it. My college experience was radically different from my peers. While they partied and joined clubs, I worked job after job to stay afloat. Waitressing, manning the university IT help desk, taking on freelance web development projects late into the night. Sleep remained a luxury and social interactions were almost non-existent. Yet, despite my grueling schedule, I maintained a perfect GPA. The computer science curriculum clicked with me, and I often found myself helping struggling classmates, one of whom was Sophia Tran. Sophia, brilliant but easily distracted, became my closest friend and, eventually, my business partner. We were a study in contrasts. I was methodical, she was impulsive. I excelled at back-end programming. She had a knack for user experience and design. Together, we were perfect. During our junior year, we started brainstorming a money management app for young adults. Most existing tools were designed for the financially comfortable, not for people like us who lived paycheck to paycheck. We saw a massive gap and were eager to fill it. We developed a prototype using campus resources, naming it Sun, an app that allowed users to track spending, automate savings, and build responsible credit. Our professors were impressed, but more importantly, our classmates found it incredibly useful. After college, Sophia and I faced a choice: stable corporate jobs or pursuing our entrepreneurial dream. The safe choice was tempting, especially given my financial history. But I remembered Professor Whitaker's words: sometimes the riskiest path yields the biggest rewards. We took the leap. To save money, we moved into a tiny, roach-infested apartment and dedicated ourselves entirely to Senator I programmed, fueled by ramen. Sophia designed user interfaces until dawn. We attended every networking event, pitch competition, and startup program we could find. 7 long months of rejections followed. Investors told us we were too young, too inexperienced, or targeting the wrong demographic. College students don't care about financial planning. One venture capitalist scoffed dismissively, but we persisted. Our breakthrough came when we secured a small business grant, allowing us to hire our first employee, a marketing specialist who helped us refine our message. We made a subtle pivot, focusing on recent graduates with student debt rather than current students. The app gained traction, slowly at first, then explosively. We were featured on a tech blog. A financial influencer with millions of followers promoted Sun, and our user base exploded from thousands to hundreds of thousands. Throughout this process, I had fleeting thoughts of contacting my family. I'd had almost no interaction with them since that night. Mom called 4 months after I left, not to apologize, but to inform me that they had, in fact, used my college fund for Camille's down payment. Dad texted from time to check in, but our connection remained distant, strained. Instead, I poured my energy into growing my business and my life. Years flew by in a blur of code, meetings, and undeniable success. Sophia and I moved from our cramped flat to a respectable office. We hired more developers, customer service reps, and marketing professionals. Sun expanded into a full financial platform. 6 years after our founding, we received an acquisition offer from one of the country's leading financial technology companies. The sum was staggering, enough to make Sophia and I multimillionaires several times over. After weeks of negotiations, we finalized the deal. I was 31 years old, wealthier than I could have ever imagined. The terrified 21-year-old sleeping in her car felt like a ghost from another life. Financial security brought the freedom to make rational decisions, not desperate ones. I invested most of my windfall, donated to scholarships for first-generation college students, and finally allowed myself to dream of building a real home, not just a place to crash between shifts. After months of searching, I found it, a magnificent craftsman-style house in an upscale neighborhood. At $985,000, it was a significant investment, but well within my budget. The 4-bedroom home exuded character and charm, with hardwood floors, wide windows, a wraparound porch, and a spacious yard. It needed work, but I saw its potential immediately. As I signed the closing paperwork, a profound irony struck me. My education fund had been stolen 11 years ago to help Camille buy a bigger house. Now, I was buying $1 million property entirely through my own efforts. During the renovation, I received an unexpected message from my father. He'd seen the news of Sen's acquisition online and wanted to congratulate me. Our conversation was awkward, but it felt like a fragile new beginning. He admitted he'd lost track of me after I left and was too ashamed to look for me. He'd since divorced again and returned to Boston. Would I consider meeting for coffee? That coffee encounter was intense, yet healing. Dad apologized for being absent during my difficult years. He confessed he knew about the college fund situation, but felt powerless to intervene. I didn't forgive him immediately, but I respected his candor. We agreed to try and rebuild our relationship, step by painful step. During our talk, he confessed that Camille and Andrew were struggling financially again. Apparently, they'd had to downsize after Andrew's firm underwent a reorganization. Mom, of course, was still supporting them in every way she could. They don't know about your success, Dad said. I haven't told them. I nodded, unsure how I felt. Part of me wanted them to know how incredibly successful I was, despite their lack of support. Another part yearned for my triumphs to remain fiercely private. As my house renovations neared completion, I decided to host a housewarming party. After much deliberation, I added my family to the guest list. Sophia worried I was setting myself up for disappointment, but I felt it was time to close that chapter one way or another. I sent formal invitations to Dad, Mom, Camille, and Andrew. Dad responded quickly, accepting. Mom called, surprised but seemingly pleased. Camille texted, "Can't wait to see how you're doing. We'll be there." The stage was set for a reunion. I never anticipated anything quite so dramatic. The morning of my housewarming was bright and beautiful. Despite staying up late to finalize everything, I rose early. Every room was perfect. The living room, with its cozy sectional and built-in bookshelves. The gourmet kitchen, with marble countertops and professional-grade appliances. The dining room, seating 10 and 4 beautifully appointed bedrooms upstairs, including a master suite with a balcony overlooking the backyard. Sophia arrived around 10:30, laden with champagne and decorations. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" she asked, arranging flowers. "It's not too late to uninvite them." "I need closure," I replied, my stomach twisting with nerves at the thought of seeing my mother and sister again. Besides, they're just 3 out of 28 guests. If things get difficult, we'll have plenty of buffers. The caterers arrived at lunchtime, setting up stations throughout the first floor. By 3:30, everything was ready. Food, drinks, music, and my nerves were frayed My tech colleagues arrived first, followed by neighbors. Professor Helen Whitaker arrived with her husband, embracing me warmly and whispering her pride. Friends from college, industry acquaintances, and my financial advisor rounded out the early guests. At 5 o'clock, the doorbell rang again. I opened it to see my father standing awkwardly on the porch, holding a gift bag. "Dad," I said, the words still feeling strange. "Evelyn," he replied, glancing at the home behind me. "This is impressive." I invited him in, gave him a brief tour, and introduced him to a few guests. He seemed genuinely happy to see me doing so well, though a bit out of place among the affluent professionals filling my house. "Your mother and sister should be here soon," he mentioned. They were going to come together. I nodded, refilling my water glass to hide my anxiety. "So, how are they?" Dad hesitated. "Andrew's work situation has been tough on them. They sold their house last year and moved into a townhouse. Your mother, Elaine, is helping a lot with the kids." Before I could respond, Sophia was at my elbow. "More guests arriving," she whispered, "including, I believe, your mother and sister." I took a deep breath and approached the front door. There they stood. Elaine, barely aged after 11 years, and Camille, still beautiful but with faint stress lines around her eyes. Behind them, Andrew, looking much older and more weathered than I remembered, and their 3 children. Lucas, a teenager, Meline, a preteen, and Noah, about 10. "Evelyn," Mom said, her tone hesitant. "Thank you for inviting us." "Welcome," I responded, stepping back to let them in. "Please come in." The children lingered meekly, clearly instructed to be on their best behavior. I smiled at them. I barely knew these nieces and nephews. "There's a game room upstairs if you get bored," I told them. "Second door on the right." That broke the ice a little. Lucas asked if I had a game system, and once I said yes, the kids bolted upstairs. Andrew spoke next, after a quick "thank you." "Beautiful home," he said, looking around with professional curiosity. "The architectural details are impressive." "Thank you," I said. "The renovation took 7 months, but it was worth it." Camille lifted her eyes. "You must have had quite a team working on it." "I did," I said, without further elaboration. "Would you like a tour?" As I led them around the house, Camille's demeanor became more calculating. She ran her fingers over the marble surfaces, peered into closets, and commented on the wonderful play area in the backyard. Mom followed more quietly, occasionally remarking on the decor or asking about a detail. "This must have been quite an investment," she finally said as we walked into the master bedroom. "It was," I agreed, "but I've been fortunate in my career." "What exactly are you doing now?" Camille asked, sitting uninvited on the edge of my bed. Dad mentioned something about an app. I gave them a truncated version of my success story, and their expressions shifted from polite inquiry to outright astonishment. "Did you sell your firm for millions?" Camille asked, her voice louder than normal. "We did," I answered. "The timing was right." The tour moved downstairs, where more guests had arrived. I introduced my family to Sophia, Professor Helen Whitaker, and other colleagues and friends who were familiar with my story. Throughout the introductions, I noticed Mom and Camille huddled in corners, speaking furiously. Andrew, detached from their conversations, was instead chatting with some of my tech industry contacts. An hour into the party, I clinked my glass to get everyone's attention. "Thank you for coming to celebrate this new chapter with me. This house signifies more than just a place to live. It's a milestone I once thought unreachable. I'm grateful to everyone who helped me along the way." As I finished my brief remarks, Camille stepped forward. "As Evelyn's sister, I'd like to say something, too." Her voice had that confident, entitled tone I remembered from childhood, the sound that usually preceded her getting exactly what she wanted. "Family is everything," she said, placing her palm on my arm. "And seeing Evelyn's beautiful home today has made me realize how perfect this would be for our family." The guests exchanged perplexed whispers. "What Camille means," Mom interjected, her voice tight, is that we're very proud of Evelyn for creating a space where family can gather. No, Camille exclaimed, tightening her grip on my arm. I mean, this house would be ideal for my family. With Andrew's career situation and the kids needing decent schools, we've been looking for exactly this type of house, in exactly this neighborhood. The room fell silent. Even the caterers stopped moving. Trays suspended in midair. Camille, Andrew said, his face burning crimson. This is not the time or place. It is exactly the right time, she snapped back. Evelyn has always wanted to help her family. She's unmarried, without children, and clearly doing well financially. This 4-bedroom house is wasted on one person when we have 3 growing children who need space and stability. Mom gave a sympathetic nod. I stood motionless, unable to process what I was hearing. After 11 years of near silence since they stole my college fund, they were now asking, no, expecting me to just hand over my home. Evelyn, Mom said, her voice adopting that authoritative tone I knew all too well. You need to gather your belongings and find a smaller place. A downtown condo would be much more suitable for your lifestyle, and it would mean the world to your sister's family. Camille was already pacing the living room, pointing out the changes they intended to make. Lucas could have the bedroom with the bay window. Meline would love the purple room, and Noah would have plenty of room for his toys in the smallest bedroom. Mom joined in. After everything Camille has gone through, she deserves this. It's the least you could do as her sister. The room had become completely silent. My guests looked on with a mixture of horror and morbid fascination. Sophia rushed to my side, offering silent support. I took a deep breath, feeling strangely calm despite the absurd spectacle unfolding before me. I have something to show you, I said quietly, pulling out my phone. I used the smart home system to connect my phone to the large television in the living room. With a few taps, I opened a document and projected it onto the screen. What is this? Camille asked anxiously, her bravado wavering. This, I explained, my voice steady, is a restraining order I filed 11 years ago, after you kicked me out on my 21st birthday. The room plunged into absolute silence as the legal document, stark and undeniable, appeared on the screen. Even the caterers remained frozen, trays in hand. What are you talking about? Mom's voice broke the stillness, full of confusion and outrage. We never kicked you out. You chose to leave. I maintained my even tone, years of practice paying off. You issued an ultimatum on my 21st birthday. Either my college funds would go toward Camille's down payment, or I packed my bags. I packed my bags. You didn't stop me. That was a disagreement, not an eviction. Camille snorted, her eyes darting across the document. You're being dramatic. I slept in my car for 3 weeks, I stated simply. In February, in Boston. A murmur rippled through the assembled guests. Dad stepped forward, his face pale. I didn't realize it was that bad, he said gently. You never told me. Would it have mattered? I asked, looking directly at him. He had no response. I swiped to the next document on my phone. This is more interesting, however. This is why I filed the restraining order. The screen now showed credit reports and loan applications in my name, all from shortly after I left the house. What is this? Andrew inquired, leaning closer to the screen, his financial background helping him grasp the gravity of what he was seeing before the others. After I left, I explained, addressing the room, someone opened 4 credit cards and took out a personal loan in my name. They had my social security number, birth certificate, and enough personal information to answer security questions. The total debt was slightly more than $52,000. Mom's face turned ashen. Camille became intensely interested in her wine glass. Fortunately, I added, the detective who helped me was thorough. Camille used her credit cards at various stores. The loan funds were deposited into an account, which then transferred the exact amount to your joint checking account, Andrew. Andrew slowly turned to face his wife, his expression one of dawning horror. You told me that money was from your mother, a gift to help with the down payment. It was. Camille insisted, her voice shrill. Mom helped arrange it. By committing identity theft against your own daughter, Professor Helen Whitaker interjected, her usual intellectual demeanor giving way to protective rage. That is a felony, in case you weren't aware. I'm sure there's been some mix-up, Mom stammered. This is the police report I filed, I said, displaying yet another document. I had sufficient evidence to file charges for identity theft and fraud. The detective was particularly interested in this loan application. I zoomed in on a signature where someone attempted to forge my signature, but misspelled my middle name. Camille's hand shook so violently that she had to set down her wine glass. If you filed charges, why weren't we arrested? She asked, her voice lacking any conviction. Because I didn't pursue it, I replied simply. I was 21, terrified, but you were still my family. So I struck a deal with the detective. I would pay off the fraudulent debts myself if they documented everything, but refrained from prosecuting. I swiped to another document. This is proof of payment. Every penny of that $52,000 plus interest was paid by me over 4 years while I was putting myself through college. Working 4 jobs, sleeping 5 hours a night, and eating ramen noodles to survive, all while paying off debt I had never incurred. Andrew looked physically ill. I had no idea, he said softly, his voice barely audible. Camille told me her parents were helping with the down payment as a gift. Just one parent, I corrected gently. And it wasn't a gift. It was theft. Mom finally spoke up. You're twisting everything to make yourself the victim. We've always done everything we could for you. Sometimes families have to make difficult decisions for the greater good. The greater good? Dad inquired, his voice rising unexpectedly. Elaine, she was 21, our daughter, and you stole from her. Mom turned on him, furious. Don't you dare judge me, Thomas. You walked away. You left me to deal with everything. I left you, not our daughters, he responded, his voice shaking with anger. And I absolutely did not authorize you to steal Evelyn's college fund or commit fraud in her name. I knew about the college fund, he said, turning back to me. I'm sorry, I didn't fight harder for you, but I had no idea about the credit cards and loan. I nodded, accepting his incomplete apology for what it was. Camille, seeing her support crumbling, changed tactics. It was a difficult time, she confessed, tears welling in her eyes. We had a baby and needed a home. Mom was just trying to help us, and you weren't there to ask. Maybe, I said, but that doesn't excuse fraud. I swiped to another document. Andrew, you might be interested in this too. While investigating the identity theft, I learned a lot about your family finances. These are records of 7 failed business ventures that Camille invested in without your knowledge and with joint funds. The total losses over 9 years exceeded $240,000. Andrew's face went white. Which business ventures? Her college friend Brianna's clothing boutique, her cousin's restaurant, a subscription box service for luxury pet products, among others, I rattled off. Every single one failed within a year. Every single one received significant investments from your family accounts. Those were personal loans to friends. Camille explained faintly. They were going to pay back everything with interest. Is that why you kept the paperwork hidden? I asked, my voice cutting. Through her weak excuse, the room had become uncomfortably tense. Guests were looking for ways out, unsure whether to stay during this clearly private, highly explosive family crisis. I think, I said loudly, regaining control of the room, that we've gotten off track. You came here today to claim my home, assuming that I would once again sacrifice my needs for Camille's desires. I am making it absolutely clear that this will never happen again. So, you'll throw your own sister out on the street? Mom demanded. Where's your compassion? My family, I laughed, but it wasn't funny. Out on compassion? Where was your compassion when I was sleeping in my car in the dead of winter? Where was your compassion when you stole my identity and left me with massive debt before I even started college? Mom opened her mouth, then snapped it shut. I am not throwing anyone out on the street, I clarified, my voice calm but firm. But I will not give up my home. If you require financial assistance, I am happy to discuss setting up education funds for Lucas, Meline, and Noah. They are innocent in all of this, and I want to know my nieces and nephews. We do not need your charity. Camille snapped, despite Andrew's expression indicating otherwise. It's not charity, I answered. It's the right way to help family. Elaine, Mom said, grabbing her purse. I believe we've heard enough, Camille. Children, we're leaving. I reminded her the children were upstairs, playing video games. And I think Andrew might want to stay. Andrew nodded slowly. I need to understand exactly what has been happening with our finances, my husband said. Kids will be fine for a while longer. Fine, Mom responded, her voice tight. Camille, let's go. Sophia took a step closer to the door. I think that's for the best. This is supposed to be a celebration of Evelyn's new home, not a place to commit property theft. Mom's face turned crimson. How dare you? This is a family matter. Yes, Sophia said, her voice unwavering. And Evelyn's chosen family is here to support her. Before you return, you should consider what real family support looks like. After they left, the party gradually regained its momentum, though discussions naturally focused on the dramatic incident. Andrew remained in the corner, speaking quietly with my financial advisor and checking his phone for Camille's frantic texts. Later, as the guests were leaving, he approached me. I owe you an apology, he said formally. I had no idea about the identity theft or those investments. I knew about the college fund, but Camille informed me that you had agreed to it. Would it have mattered if you knew the truth? I questioned. He considered it. I'd like to think so, but the truth is I was different back then. Success and money were all that mattered. He looked around the room. Looking at what you've built on your own, I realize how misguided my priorities have been. What will you do now? I asked. Have a very difficult conversation with my wife, he said solemnly, and probably contact a divorce attorney. The financial deceptions are too significant to ignore. I felt an unexpected pang of sadness for my sister. Despite her imperfections, I never wished her marriage to end. I meant what I said about education funds for the children, I told him. Regardless of what happens between you and Camille. He nodded graciously. They would love to know their aunt, especially Lucas. He's interested in programming. After Andrew left to pick up the children, Sophia and I began cleaning up. Well, she began, tossing glasses into the dishwasher. That was the most dramatic housewarming I have ever attended. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. Not exactly the closure I expected, but closure nonetheless. Do you think they'll try to contact you again? Sophia inquired, referring to Mom and Camille. Eventually, I said, shutting the dishwasher and straightening up. When they need something. But next time I'll be prepared. No more doormat, Evelyn. As the final guest left and silence descended over my new home, I wandered through each room, admiring what I had created. It wasn't just a physical structure. It represented a life achieved through sheer dedication, hard work, and the courage to stand up for myself when it counted most. The days after the housewarming were unexpectedly tranquil. I braced myself for angry phone calls, manipulative texts, and possibly even unannounced visits from Mom and Camille. Instead, there was quiet. Andrew called me and asked to meet at a coffee shop near his office. Camille moved in with your mother, he told me over lattes 4 days after the party. She took the kids for now, but we've agreed to equal custody while we sort things out. I'm sorry about your marriage, I said truthfully. He shrugged, looking fatigued, yet also oddly relieved. After what came to light at your party, I started digging deeper into our finances. It's worse than you know. We're not just struggling. We're nearly bankrupt. How is that possible? You had a good position at the investment firm, I asked, bewildered. He reiterated, I was let go 7 months ago, downsizing. I've been working as a financial consultant since then, but making about 1/3 of my previous salary. Meanwhile, Camille continued spending as though nothing had changed. He pushed a folder across the table. These are statements from accounts I didn't even know existed. Credit cards maxed out, loans I never signed for, second mortgages on the house before we sold it. Reviewing the records, I felt a chilling sense of déjà vu. She did to you what she and Mom did to me. I inquired. Except on a much larger scale, he agreed grimly. We're talking hundreds of thousands in debt. What will you do? Bankruptcy seems inevitable, he admitted. I nodded in understanding. My offer for education funds still stands. I can set up accounts that can only be used for educational expenses. That would mean everything, he remarked, with sincere gratitude in his voice. And maybe would you consider spending time with them occasionally? They need stable adults in their lives right now. That conversation signaled the beginning of a new chapter for myself, Andrew, and the children. They were intelligent, inquisitive kids who navigated their parents' separation with surprising resilience. About 3 weeks after the housewarming, Dad invited me to supper, over pasta at a quiet restaurant. He poured out years of pent-up thoughts on our family strife. I failed you, he admitted honestly. After the divorce, Elaine made it difficult to maintain contact, but that's no excuse. I should have fought harder to stay involved in your life. Why didn't you? I asked, finally putting into words a question that had plagued me for 11 years. He sighed heavily, partly guilt. The divorce was my fault. I had an affair with my second wife. Before leaving, Elaine knew, and she used that as leverage to control everything, including access to you girls. This revelation shifted my perspective on our family dynamics, though it didn't excuse his absence. I also failed to protect your college fund, he added. It was in a joint account with Elaine. I trusted her to use it appropriately, despite our problems. When I found out what happened, I was too ashamed to confront you about it. You could have helped me when I was sleeping in my car, I stated. I didn't know, he said. Elaine told me you had moved in with a friend from school. By the time I learned otherwise, months had passed, and you had stopped responding to my messages. We talked for hours that night, untangling years of misconceptions, half-truths, and outright lies. Dad wasn't blameless, but I realized he had been manipulated by Mom almost as much as I had. Your mother wasn't always like this, he clarified. After Camille was born, something changed. She became obsessed with creating a perfect life for her, often at your expense. I tried to balance things, to advocate for you, but it only created more conflict. Why the favoritism? I inquired, the question that had silently haunted my childhood. He pondered this thoughtfully. I think Camille reminded Elaine of herself, the self she wanted to be. Beautiful, socially adept, traditional. You're more like me, analytical, independent, questioning, and I think that scared her. The first communication from Camille came 3 days after my meal with Dad. A long email that alternated between apology and justification. She admitted to the identity theft, but blamed it on financial desperation and her mother's influence. She apologized for the housewarming argument, but insisted that her family's needs took precedence over my luxury. Classic Camille, Sophia observed as I showed her the email, apologizing without actually accepting responsibility. At least she's acknowledging what happened, I said, feeling more generous now that I was safe from her immediate influence. That's progress. Mother's approach was more straightforward. She began phoning every day, leaving voicemails that ranged from angry accusations to sad pleas. Families should forgive each other, she said in one message. We made mistakes, but so have you by embarrassing us in front of your friends. I didn't respond to either of them right away. Instead, I focused on setting clear boundaries with my therapist, Dr. Allison Monroe. Your mother and sister exhibit classic patterns of manipulative behavior, Dr. Monroe observed during one session. They're used to you eventually giving in. Your continued boundary setting is unfamiliar and threatening to them. I feel guilty sometimes, I told her, especially about the kids being caught in the middle. That's natural, she assured me. But remember, you are modeling healthy boundaries for those children, and you are supporting them directly through the education funds and quality time. That is genuine family support, not the conditional kind you received. Andrew and Camille's circumstances worsened over the course of several weeks. Their divorce proceedings uncovered even more financial deceptions. Andrew filed for bankruptcy as planned. Camille and the children remained in Mom's modest home, which had become cramped and tense. 7 months after the housewarming, Andrew secured a better job at a smaller company and rented a 3-bedroom apartment. The custody arrangement granted him access to the children every other week. During his weeks, I would pay Lucas several visits, helping him with programming assignments or simply offering another supportive adult presence. During one of these encounters, Andrew mentioned that Camille had started therapy. Her therapist suggested it might help with the divorce and financial issues. I'm skeptical about her commitment, but it's a start, he told me. Around the same time, I finally agreed to meet Mom for coffee. The conversation was difficult but respectful. She had aged significantly in the 7 months since the celebration. Living with Camille and the children is challenging, she told me. There's no privacy, no peace, and her spending habits. She paused, shaking her head. You enabled those habits, I kindly pointed out. I wanted her to have everything I didn't, Mom explained, an uncommon example of self-awareness. I grew up poor, wore hand-me-downs, never had the nice things other girls had. I swore my daughter would have better. You had 2 daughters, I reminded her. She had the decency to appear embarrassed. I understand. I convinced myself you were stronger, more independent, that you didn't need the same support. It wasn't a complete apology, but it was the closest I had ever gotten. This decades-long pattern of financial deception taught me that Mom's behavior was more than just favoritism. It revealed underlying issues of control, entitlement, and possibly untreated mental health problems. Meanwhile, Camille's therapy looked to be generating actual results. Our weekly meals with the kids moved from awkward to cautiously enjoyable. She got a job as an administrative assistant at a local company, her first serious job since marriage, and moved into a modest apartment when living with Mom became too expensive for both of them. I never learned to stand on my own, she admitted at one. Of our discussions, Mom did everything for me. Then Andrew took over. When everything fell apart, I had no idea how to function independently. I felt an unexpected sense of compassion as I watched her struggle with fundamental adult chores like budgeting, meal planning, and home maintenance. Camille, like me, had been a victim of Mom's dysfunction, albeit in a different way. Her golden child status had inadvertently hampered her ability to build resilience and self-sufficiency. The children adapted to their new situation with surprising adaptability. Lucas, now 12, thrived in the coding group I introduced him to. Meline developed a fascination for science that neither Camille nor Andrew had recognized. Noah's dinosaur obsession grew into a more general interest in natural history. I established college funds for each of them, with the condition that the funds be spent solely for educational purposes, a safeguard against history repeating itself. Andrew and I formed an unexpected friendship based on mutual respect. He confronted the financial calamity head-on, gradually repairing his credit and profession, while becoming a more present father than he had ever been during his marriage. The bankruptcy was humiliating, he admitted, but freeing. Not all relationships could be saved, however. Mom continued to avoid actual accountability, alternating between superficial apologies and sly explanations. During one especially challenging meal, she mentioned that my success was owed in part to her tough love style. If we hadn't pushed you out of the nest, would you have developed the same drive? She wondered, as if my homelessness had been a deliberate teaching moment rather than abandonment. I cautiously set down my fork. That's like saying abuse makes people stronger. Some survive despite it, not because of it. I succeeded in spite of how you treated me, not because of it. She swiftly changed the subject, as she was always uncomfortable with direct confrontation. These incidents confirmed Dr. Monroe's assessment. While Mom might change her conduct to preserve contact, true remorse or insight might never arrive. Some people are not capable of the depth of self-reflection necessary for genuine change. Dr. Monroe told me, you can adjust your expectations accordingly and decide what kind of limited relationship, if any, serves your well-being. By the time my house's 18-month anniversary neared, I had set clear guidelines for family interaction. Monthly lunches with Camille and the kids, occasional coffees with Mom, regular dinners with Dad, and more frequent time with the kids during Andrew's custody weeks. To commemorate the event, I arranged a small gathering, a stark contrast to the previous year's grand housewarming. Sophia accompanied her new fiancé. Professor Helen Whitaker and her husband attended. Dad arrived with Rebecca, their relationship now serious. Andrew brought the kids for a few hours. Even Camille made a brief, charming visit. Mom was noticeably absent by her own choice. After I declined to invite certain toxic family friends she insisted on including, it was a small but crucial win in maintaining my boundaries. And as the evening progressed and people had dessert on the patio, Lucas approached me with his laptop. Aunt Evelyn, can you look at my code? I'm trying to build a game, but the graphics won't render properly. We sat on the porch swing, solving his JavaScript issues as fireflies blinked in the coming dusk. The simple moment, an aunt assisting her nephew, family members supporting one another in healthy ways, brought tears to my eyes, which I quickly wiped away. Are you okay? Lucas inquired, noticing my emotion. More than okay, I told him. Just happier here. Later that night, when everyone had left, I wandered through my home, which was genuinely mine in every way. The house had become a haven, not only from the outside world, but also from the harmful family dynamics that had nearly ruined me. Within these confines, I had created new rituals, new connections, and a new understanding of family based on mutual respect rather than duty or manipulation. My journey from sleeping in my car at 21 to owning this lovely home at 31 wasn't solely about financial gain. It was about reclaiming my worth, setting healthy boundaries, and creating a life that reflected my ideals rather than others' expectations. My ties with my original family would most certainly remain complex. Mom may never fully admit the devastation she has caused. Camille's growth potential may be limited. Dad's attempts to make amends could not undo years of absence. However, I no longer required their validation or approval to feel whole. The terrified 21-year-old who drove away from her childhood home with nowhere to go had discovered not just safety, but also profound strength. She had realized that family is sometimes chosen rather than born, and that standing in your truth, no matter how difficult, results in genuine connection rather than a hollow performance of obligation. As I sat on my veranda with a cup of tea, watching the stars appear in the summer sky, I felt a tremendous sense of serenity. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had taken me exactly where I needed to be. Home, in all senses of the word.